Good morning, social media friends, connections. A shout out to some of my family members and neighbors who have been kind enough to share their time with me in previous episodes. And so, as you told me, you're coming back for other episodes. So I appreciate you showing up. By the way, you're more than welcome to do this. During this live stream conversation, in this episode of Selling That House, you are more than welcome to drop in your comments. You can certainly post questions. My team and I will certainly respond to you if we can during the live stream. If not, it will be right after to keep you engaged and address any questions that you have or interest that you have as part of our content being pushed out to you. So, audience members, here's what I'm about to tell you. Today, I've got a guest, a somewhat new relationship that I struck. He was kind enough to embrace me from my somewhat cold outreach. And as part of our first conversation a few weeks back, for your benefit, I felt he has such a unique story that I heard that I simply want to share with all of you. And here's what I'm about to say. How many of you, I know there's some of you, how many of you can do a virtual show of hands? You can drop in your posted comment. How many of you have thought about, let's get real, leaving the urban jungle, right? This urban jungle that we live our lives in, day out, for something different. My guest today has absolutely pivoted and done that. So for that reason, I thought he was a great guest for me to bring into today's episode to share with you. So with all of that said, let me welcome my guest. He goes by TJ, but I think you can also call him Tom. But I'm going to call him TJ in today's conversation. Let's bring him into the studio. But before we do, let's give him a great round of applause so that we can warm him up to have this short conversation with us together. All right, here we go. All right, TJ, your fan base is giving you that roaring welcome. You see all of the cell phone flashlights. There we go. Let's bring you in.
Hey, Bill, how are you?
I'm good. How did you like that, fan base welcome?
Felt like being back in high school, performing tuba in the back of the band. So
you play a musical instrument as well, huh?
I play a few musical instruments, yes.
All right. So besides the tuba, what's the next one?
Tuba, baritone, trombone. I can play bass guitar, and I'm trying to teach myself just a few other string instruments. At some point, I wanted to play cello, but cellos are expensive, so probably not going to do that one.
Cellos are expensive, and they're huge.
Yes, very much.
All right. Well, hey, I just learned something new about you in today's live stream conversation. You're a musician. Can you guess what musical instrument I play?
I'm going to go with, since you're asking the questions, it's not going to be anything normal like piano or anything like that, but you probably have a little bit of experience there. I'm going to go with a viola.
No, I'm not that talented. I'm not that talented, nor was I a music student who loved to practice. So here is the instrument I did play, which can be annoying to the rest of my, let's call it, band peers. I played percussion.
Oh, of course. There it is. You got the easy job. You didn't have to march. You just had to go and stand in the pit and just do all that fun stuff.
However, we did have to march because as part of marching band, we provided the cadence for the entire band to march to. So TJ, let's call it like it is. If we screwed up, you guys screwed up.
We had a few instances where the tubas, because my band was 100 people and we had 7 tubas.
Oh, wow.
So at one point, we just decided to go and do a half beat faster than the conductor was asking, and we just moved the entire band really quick. So it was a good time. But
yeah.
We'll beat up on percussion.
Yeah. Wow. So interesting. You're a man of many talents. Beyond the one we're going to hear about today. So, as you heard me, TJ, tease the audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a segment of our friends, our peers that are thinking about leaving that so-called urban jungle that you saw the visual of, and maybe doing exactly what you're doing. So let's now talk about what you are doing. So, visual aid here. By the way, this is not TJ.
I do have a chicken very similar to that, and I do wear a lot of flannel.
Yes, there you go. And so for that reason, I took creative liberty to get a short video that I thought maybe closely resemble you.
Yes.
And that way it creates the tone for the storyboard that we're going to share with your friends, maybe friends who don't know you as well yet, and certainly people who don't know you, but they might and should know you because maybe they're thinking about leaving their urban jungle to do what you are doing. So let's now talk about what are you doing? How did you make your pivot to the lifestyle that you run and live now?
So now currently what I'm doing is I own and operate a small 20-acre regenerative farm that my goal is to provide fresh produce to a local food desert. The community that I'm in is classified as a food desert. So my plan is to eventually provide enough food for 200-ish individuals to be able to have fresh produce for at least 8 months out of the year. Once funding becomes more available, adding more greenhouses, extend that to all 12 months.
Wow.
At this point, I am able to do about 30 individuals just off of what sales were last year, which increased from 1 the year before. So, 30x I think is a good return every year.
That's a good return. How long have you been doing this with your farm?
So with my farm specifically, I purchased the farm in 2022.
Okay.
And moved in here shortly after my divorce. I grew up on a 80-acre hobby farm where we raised goats, and I was involved in 4-H for 10 years prior to that. And then with everything, graduating high school in 2007, the entire culture of everything was completely different. So I was fully planning on becoming a teacher, moving to the big city. I chose schools that were chose colleges that were near big cities, and I was just planning on being an urbanite.
Yeah.
And ended up competing in college athletics for a little bit, trying to just become that typical urban teacher and just make a difference that way. Ended up moving to a decent sized city inside of Indiana with my wife at the time, and really decided that teaching wasn't for me.
Okay.
So once that relationship ended, I was kind of cast adrift and didn't really know what to do exactly. Moved back up with my family on their 80-acre farm in a different location, and just kind of revitalized my love of agriculture.
Gotcha.
saw a need, wanted to get closer to my kids, and moved into an apartment for a little bit inside of middle downtown of a bigger city in Indiana.
Okay.
Richmond, Indiana, which, compared to Chicago is infinitesimally small, but still it's a large city for this side of the state.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
living in a small 1-bedroom apartment right in the middle of downtown just really kind of galvanized me to be like, no, this is not what I want at all. So I found a farm that was for sale due to an estate sale and just jumped at the chance to take a farm loan, which is a whole interesting process in of itself.
It is.
Through the FSA, and bought 20 acres. I like to say that I paid for the 20 acres and got the house for free because the house would not have passed inspections. So I am slowly restoring an 1840s farmhouse, which is one of the oldest houses in the area, restoring that to its former glory, and while also creating the farm life.
Wow. So from when we first connected with each other, and as you now recap, but you went a little bit deeper into your pivot, right? To farm life. I mean, farm life has run in your blood, it sounds like.
Yes.
You come from a family of farmers, so you kind of knew, as part of your pivot to a farm life from urban jungle, you knew what to expect, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So my family was not originally farmers. They ended up purchasing the 80 acres in Midwest Michigan, Hastings, which is right near Grand Rapids. So, 3.5, 4 hours away from Chicago. They purchased that 80 acres for $80,000.
Wow.
So back in early 90s, which
Wow.
I'm just like, that would be amazing.
Yes. Yes.
And we just kind of used it as a hobby farm. My dad had designs of being a goat breeder, doing all these things, and it never really came up. So we really just kind of used our goats as pets and occasionally sold some off.
Okay.
We had our own little garden and everything, but we never really got fully deep into the agriculture. We cash rented out our land, things like that. So I've been exposed through my 4-H and stuff like that to what I call real farmers, understanding that. And there was a time in my life where I thought I wanted to be an ag ed teacher or a veterinarian or something like that, but it always ended up coming back to history. And that's what my degree is in, is, secondary education with a history focus.
Yeah.
But yeah, coming into and actually owning my own farm, I have realized that I know next to nothing. So
really,
I've been really involved in getting certificates and other types of degrees and various other things from various colleges around the country, doing degree programs, doing a lot of work with our local USDA, our 4-H office, our extension offices, to just gain more knowledge, because one, farming has changed so much from just scratch a hole in the ground, throw seeds in, jump back.
Really?
To the entire management of a farm, which I feel like has been the biggest change from what I originally thought.
Okay. So before we get into my next question, let me do a little break here in our live stream, and I'm going to do a call to action, call out to our audience, audience members, social media friends. If TJ's story kind of resonates with you, right? And you're looking for your, guess what? Soundbite here. If you're looking for your green acres, continue listening and watching what else we're going to talk about here. So, TJ, for someone who wants to make the same pivot, right? What should they expect?
Lots of long hours and keeping your your main job. So right now, I work for a title insurance underwriter. Okay. And I'm, doing 10 hours a day working that. During the winter, right now, it's 15 degrees outside, so I don't have a ton going on in the farm. However, I'm constantly planning.
Okay.
But the thing is that you are going to be working 18, 19-hour days.
Yeah.
So even if your farm is just a hobby farm, there is always things. So what I tell people now is that you're going to want to save, if you want to have a hobby farm, establish some sort of hobby farm. Not only are you going to want to save for your down payment, all that kind of stuff to get your farm, and I will direct you to Bill to go and get all of that information. Save another $10,000.
Yeah.
That is the kind of base number to start a farm, to get all of your equipment, to get your seeds, to get whatever you need to be somewhat self-sustainable at that point. So when you're expecting that, expect that you are going to be up for a long time and as soon as you clock out of work, or even while you're at work and you're doing your lunch. During the summer, my lunches are generally me grabbing a sandwich, running outside, and weeding, planting some other things, transplanting, seeding, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then coming right back in, doing some more work, and then immediately, as soon as it hits 5 o'clock, 5:30, whatever time you get out of work, running right back outside to go and do something else.
Interesting.
Just constant movement.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me how you blend two kind of opposing pillars of business in your current farm life, which is, you've blended, of course, the business of closing, settlement, and title, which is very real estate oriented, with your big, vast ownership of real estate.
Yes, exactly.
That's so interesting. What is your why going forward, as you're going to certainly grow, expand your farm? By the way, your farm is apparently called Climbing Tree Farm.
Yes.
What is your why as to why you're going to do what you're doing for yourself? Are you wanting to help others with this type of venture?
So my why, I transferred schools a lot because I assumed when I first started that athletics were going to be kind of my thing. I was a pretty decent swimmer, pretty decent football player, and I transferred schools a lot to try and pursue that athletic dream while getting a degree.
Okay.
One of the schools I ended up transferring to just completely destroyed me. I ended up being homeless for a little bit, living out of my car, getting evicted from various apartments, and having a lot of food insecurity.
Okay.
Living in complete abject poverty. And after I my family fished me out of that situation, I really got into the point of wanting to help people in that situation, which led me into teaching, working inside of community corrections as one job to teach people inside of community corrections skills and everything like that to come out of it. But then it also kind of forced me into realizing that our food security is not what it should be.
Yeah.
And with this farm, my goal and my why is to provide food security to my community. Obviously, I have 2 children. The back end of that is providing them with a stable home, a business that they can walk into, have their own security and everything like that. I plan on building another house on the property in 10 years or so that they can move into. But all that is secondary to really helping people and providing a security blanket for my local community to where they are able to have access to fresh food without having to drive 30 minutes to a grocery store or rely on Dollar General.
Yeah. You're contributing to the solutions of the so-called food deserts, right?
Yeah.
So going forward, it shouldn't be a surprise what you're telling us. It shouldn't be a surprise for you, TJ, with Climbing Tree Farm, to be kind of a ongoing presence at like farmers markets and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Love it. So, as we wrap up today's live stream conversation, this episode of Selling That House, audience members, I hope you enjoyed this. I did, because let's be real. For those of you that know me, I don't come from a farm family. I know probably squat about farm life. However, what certainly resonated with me in my first conversation with TJ was, I'll be honest with you, TJ, audience members, was his why. So, for those of you watching, listening to today's episode of Selling That House, if you're thinking about making your pivot from that urban jungle to your concept of farm life, wherever that might be, whether it be in Indiana and or the neighboring states, here in the Midwest, there's a lot of hobby farms. And if as part of what you heard from TJ, this is something you're scratching the surface on, and ultimately you want to make it happen, if you do need, by the way, if you do need financing for hobby farms, how can you reach out to me? All you need to do, audience members, is simply scan this QR code. You will easily have the information to start a conversation with me. And more importantly, if you do need to have a one-to-one conversation with TJ, I will gladly broker an introduction between you, TJ, and you guys can go more into the weeds of how to make your farm life as successful as possible. So, TJ, thank you for showing up. Thank you for sharing your time with me, my audience, and yours, as well as we jumpstart our 2025, everyone. Let me ask my music posse to play us out. All of you have a great Thursday, rest of your week. We will see each other in the next episode of Selling That House.